I am around 40 to 50 hours in Metaphor ReFantazio. As to be expected with an Atlus title, it is a meaty endeavor. But I wanted to list down my thoughts so far with the title. While my video essays normally have a point that I drive towards, this video will be more of a list of observations so far. One of the most noteworthy things about Metaphor is its artistic choices. While it is clearly set in a fantasy world, there are certain anachronisms that you will just have to accept as part of their world building and art direction. Most notably, the clothing. All the important characters are wearing very modern, very fashionable clothing. It is somewhere in the realm of high fashion to straight up avant-garde. You just gotta get used to the fact that your protagonist is slaying monsters in a Louis Vuitton long-sleeve shirt. I suppose it is appropriate. Avant-garde fashion is weird by design. It is supposed to challenge the definition and understanding of fashion, creating new avenues of expression and redefining it. Many of the characters in Metaphor are unsatisfied with their society and are seeking ways to change it. Even before the election process begins, there were already people making drastic moves to bring about social change. Metaphor's art style also has a very distinct look to it. An art style can inform the audience of the themes explored and the tone used in the media. A lot of Persona 5's art style is reminiscent of graffiti and street art. This art direction is used to portray the youthful rebellion the Phantom Thieves will inhabit as they struggle against corrupt adults. Brutal Legend's world is styled to look like different heavy metal album covers that portray a dark fantasy world. As such, its art style evokes otherworldly danger and the visceral excitement of such a world. As for Metaphor, especially when it comes to the big bosses of the world, I have read that the art style is inspired by the works of the surrealist Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch. But before I learned that, I had a different impression. My first thoughts upon seeing it is that it reminded me of the surrealist artwork that could be found in magazines, most particularly music and fashion magazines. For the young people, before the advent of the internet, when people wanted to learn more about a particular interest, they would purchase a periodical publication called a magazine. These magazines would cater to different types of interests, from photography to sports, or the interests of a particular demographic, like middle-aged men or teenage girls, for example. These magazines would foster communities around the periodicals as their readers would be united around a particular interest. Readers would write to the magazines, and sometimes the magazines would publish their letters and even respond. I mention this because music and fashion magazines were cultivating grounds for countercultures. Of course, there would be more mainstream versions of these magazines, but just as how music and fashion can be subversive and dissident, lending voices to marginalized communities and expressing emotions often pushed to the shadows and sidelines, so too did these counterculture magazines echo the sentiment. The magazines would contain articles relevant to the people that the subversive music and fashion spoke to. And so, the articles would vary from political and social commentary to exploring underground cultures like hippies and rock and roll. These articles would often be paired with artwork that was equally unconventional and thought-provoking as the articles themselves. Metaphor is, ironically, not subtle with its commentary. From the oppression of minorities to the demonization of faiths outside of state-sanctioned religion, the game explores many of the issues that gave rise to these countercultures in the real world. So, choosing such a surrealist magazine art for some of Metaphor's more striking visuals definitely communicates the strong desire for social and political change that lies at the core of many characters' motivations. Anxiety is one of the big themes of the game. I mean, it's the name of a status debuff and all. Even before the complications of the succession magic, the unrest that prevailed in the land was making people uneasy. We see how different people react to anxiety. Some are seeking a scapegoat. It doesn't matter if there's any evidence, people just want someone to blame for their troubles. Some are clinging to established structures like religion and tradition. It has united their people and guided them through trying times before. Why wouldn't it do it again? It doesn't matter if their faith is misunderstood, manipulative, oppressive, or unjust. What matters is that it can save them from their anxiety. There is also no shortage of people who are taking advantage of the unrest. Whether it is to profit or push an agenda, there are people who are using the public unrest for their own benefit. And this is where Luis comes in. Luis has been fear-mongering long before the king's death. He is pulling a Shido from Persona 5 by posturing himself as the stabilizing element. But instead of mental shutdown cases, you have surrealist monsters. Perhaps there's more to his plan. I'll have to get through the rest of the game first. The most interesting thing to me is how Metaphor defines a hero. It describes a hero as someone who can turn anxiety into strength. Metaphor wears its inspiration on its sleeve, as Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is an integral part of its world building and writing. In Christopher Vogler's Practical Guide to the Hero's Journey, there is a stage called the refusal of the call. It is when the hero is called to adventure but refuses to answer. Something is holding back the hero, whether it is fear, prior obligations, lack of strength, etc. The hero refuses to let go of the familiar. This is key to make the hero more relatable, to show that the hero experiences the same fears and trepidations as the audience. But more than that, it sees the apprehension as necessary to the journey. Anxiety is something everyone deals with, but the important thing is refusing to allow anxiety to control our lives. Whether it is overcoming it, managing it, living with it, or a myriad of other ways people deal with anxiety, that is how we grow as people. Well, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching. I'll chip away more at the game to see if there's something interesting to talk about. Until our paths cross again, see you, traveler.